Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive.
hmm
And today we're tackling a pretty interesting topic,
Yeah.
the role of error in innovation.
I love this.
Yeah,
This is a good one.
it feels almost a little counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Total.
Like we're always told to, avoid mistakes and be perfect and all that.
Yeah.
But in the world of innovation, like, mistakes can be incredibly valuable.
They're essential.
Yeah. And we're going to use Stephen Johnson's Where Good Ideas Come From as our guide.
Oh, that's a great book.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's delivered in audiobook format, which is how I consumed it. So
Cool.
yeah, so think of this deep dive as a crash course in how mistakes can actually lead to breakthroughs and what that means for you as a listener.
Awesome.
So one of the best examples from the book is the story of Lee DeForest and the invention of the Audion, which eventually became the triode, which is the foundation for vacuum tubes and really all modern electronics.
At the foundation of everything.
So how does a mistake lead to such a huge breakthrough? Well, DeForest's story is a perfect example of how a misunderstanding
Yeah.
can lead to something incredible.
A misunderstood.
So picture this. It's the early 1900s, and DeForest is this, tinkerer. He's in his Chicago bedroom messing around with a spark gap transmitter.
Okay.
And across the room, a gas burner is lit.
Right. Normal enough.
Normal, right. Nothing too crazy here.
Yep.
But then he fires up his transmitter, and the flame starts acting weird. It gets brighter. It changes color.
Oh, that's interesting.
Wouldn't you be curious if you saw that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think anyone would be like, whoa, what's going on here?
Yeah, so DeForest thinks he's onto something huge.
Huge.
Like he believes that the electromagnetic pulse from the spark gap is somehow intensifying the flame's energy from across the room,
Interesting.
right? And he thinks this could revolutionize wireless communication, like even surpassing Marconi and Tesla.
Wow. So he sets off on this quest to harness this like newfound power, thinking he's onto something even bigger than radio waves.
Exactly. And so he starts experimenting with these gas-filled glass bulbs, right? Going through tons of iterations over years. And eventually he adds a third electrode to this bulb and connects it to an antenna. And then almost by chance, he uses this simple bent piece of wire for the middle electrodes, which he called the grid. And that becomes the heart of the Audion.
And that's the birth of the trio. It's incredible how like such a simple element, like a bent piece of wire, could be so pivotal.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it all started with this misunderstanding, because here's the twist. DeForest was completely wrong about what was actually happening.
Really?
The flame wasn't reacting to radio waves at all. It was just regular sound waves from the transmitter.
Oh, so his entire premise, his eureka moment, was based on a misunderstanding.
Yeah, but that's the point.
Wow.
That's where the magic happens.
So being wrong in this case was more valuable than being right.
That's precisely what Johnson argues, that being wrong in this case was more valuable than being right, because it forced DeForest down a path he never would have explored if he had been correct from the start.
It makes you wonder how many times we dismiss something as just wrong without realizing the potential hidden within.
It's like those optical illusions where you have to shift your perspective to see the hidden image.
Yeah,
Sometimes you have to be wrong to see the real opportunity.
I like that.
Right.
That's good.
And DeForest isn't the only example of this, right?
Oh, not at all. History is full of these serendipitous discoveries that are fueled by error. Think about Alexander Fleming and penicillin, a contaminated petri dish that revolutionized medicine.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or Louis Daguerre and photography, all thanks to a spilled jar of mercury.
And who could forget Wilson Greatbatch,
Oh, yeah.
the inventor of the pacemaker,
Yes.
who grabbed the wrong resistor and ended up changing the world.
It's amazing.
It's fascinating, though, that these weren't just random accidents. These inventors were immersed in their fields. They were grappling with specific problems for years. Their minds were primed to recognize the potential in what others might have just dismissed as a simple mistake.
It's like they were playing a mental game of connect the dots, and the mistake was the missing piece that completed the picture.
Yeah.
But they could only see it because they'd been studying the puzzle for so long. It wasn't just luck. It was preparation meeting opportunity.
So it's not just about making mistakes. It's about being receptive to what those mistakes might be trying to tell us,
Yeah,
right? Having that mental flexibility to see things differently.
absolutely. And research has actually shown that a little bit of noise, those unexpected hiccups or dissenting voices, can boost creativity. Like Charlotte Mall, a researcher, she found that groups who were deliberately fed erroneous information ended up being more creative.
That's wild.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
The wrong information forced them to challenge their assumptions and think outside the box.
So a little bit of disruption can be a good thing.
It can be.
It's like shaking up a snow globe.
Yeah.
You get a completely different perspective.
You get a fresh perspective.
Yeah, and sometimes we need that outside perspective to see things clearly. Kelvin Dunbar, he studied microbiology labs and found that scientists often dismissed unexpected results as noise or contamination.
Right.
But outsiders, looking at those same results with fresh eyes, could often spot the potential significance.
Interesting.
So, it's like that saying, you can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're so focused on the details that we miss the bigger picture.
We need that outside perspective, that
Yeah.
fresh perspective. Yeah, it's like we need that, like a healthy dose of beginner's mind, right?
Yeah.
That fresh perspective that allows us to see things without all those preconceived notions.
It's so hard to get back to that sometimes.
It is?
Once you've seen something one way, it's really hard to unsee it.
It is. It's very true.
Yeah.
And speaking of perspective, Johnson also talks about how innovation often builds on what already exists, this concept that he calls exaptation.
Okay, exaptation. So that sounds kind of like upcycling for ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the idea that something that evolved or was created for one purpose can be repurposed for something completely different.
Okay.
So think about bird feathers originally for warmth, but later adapted for flight. That's exaptation in action.
Wow. Or those lobe fins that eventually became limbs
Yeah,
as creatures transition from water to land.
exactly.
So nature's kind of the master of this repurposing.
It's happening all around us.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to the natural world. Gutenberg's printing press borrowed the screw press technology from, wait for it, winemaking.
What?
Who knew that wine could be so instrumental in the spread of knowledge?
That's amazing. I never would have connected those two.
Yeah.
And it makes you think what other unexpected connections are out there just waiting to be discovered.
Oh, all kind. I'm sure. Tons of them.
Yeah.
Just waiting for us to make those connections.
It's all about looking at things with new eyes.
Yeah.
Take Twitter, for example. It was originally designed for sharing personal updates, but users quickly exapted it for organizing protests, spreading news, even providing customer support.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like that game where you have to find new uses for everyday objects.
Right.
Suddenly, a paperclip isn't just for holding papers. It's a lockpick, a makeshift antenna, or even a tiny sculpture.
I love that.
It's all about reframing the familiar.
Totally reframing the familiar. And Johnson takes this idea a step further with the concept of stacked platforms.
Okay.
He argues that innovation often occurs in layers, building on pre-existing structures. So think about Tim Berners-Lee creating the World Wide Web on top of the internet's infrastructure.
Or YouTube, which leveraged the web, Adobe Flash, and JavaScript to create a whole new way to share videos.
Exactly. And Twitter itself expanded its functionality through user-created conventions like the @reply and the hashtag.
Yeah.
It's this constant building and evolving, like a coral reef growing layer by layer.
So instead of starting from scratch, every time innovators can build on what's already there, focusing on the unique elements of their creation.
Exactly.
Like they're given a toolbox full of incredible tools and can use them to build something truly remarkable.
It's a beautiful model, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it makes you realize how much we rely on these hidden platforms in our daily lives.
Yeah.
They're the foundation for so much of what we take for granted.
Yeah, it's like the difference between writing a book by hand and using a word processor.
Yeah.
The underlying technology allows you to focus on the content, the story you want to tell, instead of getting bogged down in the mechanics of ink and parchment.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah. So we've talked about error.
Right.
We've talked about exaptation, and we've talked about stacked platforms.
Yes.
These are all these important pieces of the innovation puzzle.
Yeah, they're all connected.
But Johnson also presents this fascinating model for understanding the different contexts in which innovation occurs. He calls it the 4 quadrants.
Oh, yeah, the 4 quadrants.
This is where things get really interesting.
I see a good one.
Because it challenges some of our basic assumptions about where good ideas come from.
For sure.
So the 4 quadrants, they categorize innovation based on whether it's driven by individuals or networks, and whether it occurs within a market context or outside of it. So you've got individuals working within markets, individuals working outside of markets, networks within markets, and networks outside of markets.
Yeah, so like a grid mapping out the different landscapes of innovation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's break it down a little bit.
Okay.
Quadrant 1 is all about individual creators working within a market context. This is your classic inventor, entrepreneur, or private corporation seeking profit. Think of someone like Thomas Edison or Steve Jobs.
Right, those big names.
Yeah.
The classic entrepreneur-inventor types.
Yeah, quadrant 2 is still market-driven, but it involves networks of companies collaborating and competing at the same time. So the development of the smartphone is a great example.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
You've got all these different companies contributing to the technology, pushing each other to innovate.
Right, constantly one-upping each other.
Yeah,
Trying to get the latest and greatest features out there.
exactly. Then you have quadrant 3, which is about individual creators working outside of a market context. So these are your hobbyist inventors.
Right.
The tinkerers working in their garages, driven by curiosity and passion rather than profit.
Yeah, think of someone like Nikola Tesla experimenting with electricity in his lab, pushing the boundaries of what was possible without necessarily worrying about, commercial applications.
Yeah, and finally, there's quadrant 4, which is all about networks of collaborators working outside of a market context. So this is the realm of open source software, citizen science projects, and online communities where people come together to solve problems and share ideas freely.
Right. The development of the internet itself is a prime example of a fourth quadrant innovation. No single company or individual can claim ownership of it. It's the product of countless collaborations driven by a shared vision of a more connected world.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to think about the power of collective intelligence and the amazing things that can be accomplished when people come together with a common purpose. But here's the thing that really blew my mind. Johnson argues that the fourth quadrant, despite the lack of traditional market incentives, has been incredibly fertile for groundbreaking innovations.
It really challenges that classic narrative that innovation is primarily driven by competition and the pursuit of profit.
Yeah.
The fourth quadrant shows us that there's another way, a more collaborative and community-driven approach that can be just as effective, if not more so.
It's like we've been conditioned to think about innovation in terms of winners and losers.
Yeah.
But the fourth quadrant shows us that it can be a win-win for everyone involved.
Exactly. It's about tapping into the collective wisdom and creativity of a community rather than relying on the genius of a few individuals.
So why isn't the fourth quadrant more celebrated?
Right.
Why do we still put so much emphasis on competition and secrecy in so many areas?
It's a complex issue, but I think part of it comes down to deeply ingrained beliefs about the power of the market. The idea that competition and financial incentives are the primary drivers of progress.
Yeah, it's like we've created a system that rewards individual achievement
Yeah.
and often overlooks the power of collaboration and shared knowledge.
But the evidence is clear. The fourth quadrant has produced some of the most transformative innovations in human history. It's a testament to the power of open exchange and collaborative creativity.
So what can we learn from the fourth quadrant?
Right.
How can we apply these insights to our own lives and work?
I think it starts with recognizing that we don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
that we need to be open to different perspectives and willing to learn from others.
It's about fostering a spirit of collaboration, both in our personal lives and our professional endeavors. It's about seeking out those opportunities to connect with others who share our interests and passions.
Yeah, and it's about being willing to share our own knowledge and expertise freely, knowing that the more we give, the more we'll receive in return.
It's about creating those fourth quadrant spaces in our own lives, whether it's joining an online community, volunteering for a local project, or simply having more conversations with people outside our usual circles.
Yeah, it's like we're expanding our definition of innovation, moving beyond the image of the lone genius and embracing the power of the collective.
Exactly. And this isn't just about grand societal shifts.
Yeah.
Johnson also offers some practical advice on how we can cultivate these fourth quadrant principles in our own lives, even if we're not, building the next internet.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we become more innovative in our everyday lives?
Well, one key concept he emphasizes is the importance of nurturing slow hunches.
Slow hunches.
Yeah, it's the idea that good ideas often don't come in a flash of brilliance,
Right.
but rather they simmer and connect over time.
So it's more like a slow burn than a sudden explosion.
Precisely. Johnson encourages us to pay attention to those nagging questions, those lingering thoughts that keep popping up in the back of our minds.
Yeah. They might be the seeds of a truly innovative idea, just waiting for the right conditions to germinate.
It makes me think of those times when you're struggling with a problem and you just can't seem to crack it, and then maybe while you're taking a walk or doing something completely unrelated, the solution just suddenly hits you.
Oh, yeah.
It's like your subconscious mind has been working on it all along.
That's a perfect example. And one way to cultivate those slow hunches is to embrace serendipity,
Okay.
to be open to those unexpected encounters and experiences that might spark a new connection or insight.
So it's about being open to the world, to new possibilities, and recognizing that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Exactly. And it's about creating the space for those ideas to flourish. You know, Johnson's a big advocate of keeping a notebook or a commonplace book where you can jot down your thoughts, observations, inspirations.
Yeah, like building your own personal idea library.
Yeah, a repository of raw material that you can draw upon when you're working on a project or simply need a creative boost.
Yeah, and just like those stack platforms we talked about earlier, the more diverse and interconnected your personal idea library is, the more creative potential you have.
I think that's true.
So it's about being a collector of experiences, a curator of ideas. It's about feeding our curiosity and constantly expanding our knowledge base.
And it's about recognizing that learning doesn't have to be confined to a classroom or a textbook.
Yeah.
It can happen anywhere, anytime, if we're open to it.
So in a way, we're all potential innovators,
Yeah.
regardless of our profession or background.
I think so.
We all have the capacity to generate new ideas and contribute to the world in meaningful ways.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really empowering message.
Yeah,
It means that innovation isn't something that's reserved for a select few.
right.
It's something that's accessible to everyone.
Yeah, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of innovation, what are some key takeaways that we can leave our listeners with? What's the one thing you hope they'll remember?
I think the most important message is that error isn't something to be feared, but rather embraced. It's an essential part of the creative process, a catalyst for breakthroughs and unexpected discoveries.
So it's about shifting our mindset, seeing mistakes not as failures, but as opportunities for learning and growth.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that innovation often happens in the most unexpected places, in those messy, collaborative spaces where ideas can collide and new possibilities emerge.
It's about embracing the power of the collective, the wisdom of the crowd, and recognizing that we can achieve far more together than we ever could alone.
And it's about believing in our own creative potential. Even if we don't see ourselves as traditional innovators, we all have something unique to offer the world. And it's often in those unexpected connections and serendipitous moments that our most brilliant ideas are born.
So to our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep connecting, keep experimenting, and keep those ideas flowing. You never know what amazing things you might create.
And remember, embrace the mess, embrace the noise, and embrace the joy of discovery. That's where the magic happens.
That's a fantastic note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the surprising role of error in innovation.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time, keep innovating.